The Knowledge Valorisation platform connects players in Europe with ambition.
Hello there! Do you also find that the research results are slow to reach the market? Should benefit citizens better? Should we turn into more solutions to tackle climate change and other challenges? The EU Knowledge Valorisation platform is there to change that. Have a look and exchange with like-minded people across Europe to make it happen. Share your best example of a valorization practice and get visibility. Be inspired by what others are doing. Join a community to tackle specific issues. Find advice and guidelines. Take part in workshops and events like the EU Knowledge Valorisation Week. Keep up with latest developments and background studies. There is much for you to discover on the EU Knowledge Valorisation platform. Join us!
Webinar of today's Knowledge Valorization Week. It's called Counting Starts, Pioneering Concepts for More Impact Through Research. My name is Siniša Mačić. I'm a senior expert on human capital development with the Regional Cooperation Council. We work primarily in Southeast Europe. And before we start, let me remind you that you can also join today's discussion through Slido. You can find the link on the web streaming page that you are seeing right now. Background information on the best practices can also be found on the repository of the European Union's Knowledge Valorization platform, where you can find additional really interesting examples of how research can contribute to creating businesses and developing societies, generally speaking. Today's session is primarily about how to involve research and researchers with business communities and how to commercialize knowledge. We have today two fantastic speakers. So let me begin immediately with my colleague on my left, Marie-Louise Konradsen. She's head of Open Innovation in Science at Aarhus University. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. And second speaker is going to be Gilles Meys. He's the CEO of Counting Science, who will be speaking about AI-based solutions and how to ensure that we get tech transfer to businesses and business community. Without going into too many details, let me invite immediately our colleague Marie-Louise to present Odin, an open innovation in science platform. So Marie-Louise, after this kind of quirky introduction to I'd say formal. Let's dive into a proper discussion. What is Odin, and how would you present it in a very short way to our audience today?
Oh, thank you, first of all, for inviting me here to present Odin and the patent-free model it is based on. Can I have my first slide? Thank you. So essentially, Odin is a collaboration platform where we help academic researchers and companies join forces and co-create research projects where they work entirely without patents and they share the results and data with the public, no strings attached. Next slide, please. Thank you. Odin is an ongoing pilot project, so actually we will end later this year. We have received funding from the Novo Nordisk Foundation to set up a platform that can facilitate this type of collaboration in the very earliest stages and pre-competitive stages of drug discovery. And we have participants from all over the university, Aarhus University, where I'm from, and any company of any size can join us. There's no membership fee. We try to keep it open to all types of companies. Next slide, please. So how does it work? Well, with this drawing at the top, we provide a digital platform combined with a lot of structured and handheld matchmaking so that we can help the researchers and companies showcase ideas that they may have for projects they want to do together. Or if you're a company, it could be a problem of a technical nature that you're struggling with. And you can showcase that on the platform and get input and partners from a wide community of contributors to help you solve that. And we help you do this. So the idea is that if you create a space where you remove constant contract negotiations over IP and pricing discussion, then you will have a different room for collaboration, a different mental space as well. And because we are many looking at the same problem, that accelerates innovation and discoveries. And we can collectively take on more complex issues together than any one of us can do alone. So if you can set the team and you have the right idea, you can apply Odin for funding for your project. And if you get a grant from us, you must share your data and results with the public. No strings attached. We issue universal use rights for whatever we produce. We share our foreground knowledge, not our background knowledge. And there's a legal framework created by our tech transfer office and the companies involved that regulates all of that. So this will become public domain, so you can't patent or open results. However, you can use them, and that's what's going on in the left part of the circle. It's not a circle, drawing. Companies can use our open results for commercial purposes, and they can even protect the specific application of our open results. Because we are not doing final polished products, that's not what we are developing in the open setup. We are providing a knowledge base in the form of research tools, improved understanding of diseases, disease models, new biomarkers, target validation, stuff like that. Something that the companies can use, but not something they need to patent per se and protect. And in most cases, the companies from our setup are planning to mature our open results in follow-on closed contracted research as we know it from standard tech transfer with IP negotiations. But that goes on after we're done in Odin. Next slide, please. So we had a midterm evaluation done last year, and you can find it using that QR code on the slide. And the central findings of that evaluation was that companies and researchers alike actually enjoy this type of collaboration model. They find that it reduces the collaboration barriers because there's no IP negotiation, because we help them find the right partners, and because we provide funding for the projects. And because we provide the funding, it also allows a lot of companies to take an interest and engage in more early stage research, perhaps even high risk, high reward research that they usually couldn't engage themselves in. And these projects are based on a collaboration between companies and researchers and inspired by real live industry needs. And that makes it easier for the companies to translate our open results for purposes downstream. We have also attracted a lot more companies than we had hoped for. We had hoped for 15, we got 44. And we also hoped for 30 group leaders from the university. We got over 100. And even though we have not yet ended our 11 funded projects, they are already planning 11 upcoming publications with their company partners, and they are planning to do many of these closed follow-on projects to mature the results. And while we've been doing this open approach at Aarhus University, there's been no decline in the number of invention disclosures that we have seen there. So that's, at least to me, an example of why the two approaches, the open and the classical closed one, doesn't seem to be in conflict at all.
Maria-Louise, thank you very much. We already have one question through Slido that we can connect with my following question. You talked about patent-free collaborations, which is quite rare. I think this is one of the unique initiatives worldwide. I'd like to learn more about your collaborations with businesses and in particular experiences, how businesses experience this collaboration with your university. In most cases, they tend to be quite sort of reserved when it comes to cooperation with researchers, research organizations. There's always some level of distrust involved. How would you explain that?
Yeah, in pharma, well, that industry historically has tended to shape itself around IP, but I also think they are increasingly beginning to source inputs, innovation inputs from external parties. And Odin is just a response to that. We involved companies in the design of Odin. They are part also of our governing body, so it's really co-creation all through, not only in the research projects, but also in the design of this setup. So we've tried to design it to make it as relevant to industry as possible. But I think the key word in Odin here is that we do pre-competitive research only, meaning that we create a knowledge foundation that will pave the way for downstream innovation, but not something that will end up being an integral part of a final product that a company would need to protect, obviously. We do something that open up new research and development opportunities, but not the things that they will need to commercialize. And I think as to the question, when should something be open and when should something be closed? We found in Odin that the companies, they are better at defining that than we are. It's a self-regulating mechanisms because the company knows going into an Odin project that the results will be shared with the public and its competitors. So they tend to design our open projects in a way where we can address a problem at a very generic level that can potentially have many different uses afterwards, and therefore doesn't disclose anything or reveal anything about the company's pipeline afterwards. It doesn't reveal anything about what they want to do with the open results, but they can do anything.
So if I gather correctly, it's all about involving companies from day one, basically, to ensure that both sides understand and speak the same language, where researchers can really understand what businesses need and then work on it to provide, value for businesses that they can develop, business models further on. I guess this is one of the answers to the first question we had through Slido: how do you find industry partners for Odin? Could you just get into that, please?
Yeah.
So let me mix the questions from the audience and my questions.
No.
I think it'll be better and more dynamic.
No problem. Initially, we interviewed with, I think it was 9 companies of all sizes, large pharma corporations and small spin-outs and small biotechs, because we wanted to cater to the needs of different types of companies. And then we recruited via industry organizations through the researchers who came up with ideas and tended to collaborate with other companies, and we tried to market this online, and that gave a lot of interest from abroad, from international companies as well.
Okay. You also mentioned that your initiative is primarily about early stage innovation.
Yeah.
So it's up to technology readiness level 3. Since your results exceeded your expectations, in some ways you tripled your results compared to what you initially planned to achieve. How do you support these innovative initiatives to move on after TRL 3?
Well, it's when people apply us for funding, they're required to do a project proposal where they detail the idea that they have for a project, and we can only fund up to TRL 3. That's one of our rules. So they have to design the projects to stay within that limit. What goes on after that? Well, that could be one of the closed innovation projects, for instance, with the industry partners, or a company could pick up on our results and do it as in-house product development. That's something that has to happen outside of Odin, but you can mature it to higher TRLs after that.
Later stage, yeah.
I should also know that something unexpected can always occur in an open project, and you're only obligated to share what you described in the proposal. So should something promising turn up as a branch to an Odin project, but not something you've described, you can actually look at that and say, okay, we'd rather do that as a closed project, and that would be okay. You haven't covered that in the proposal. We only require that you share what you set out to do in your proposal.
Let me throw another question from the audience, which goes basically beyond drug discovery? How do we get other businesses involved, other industries involved? Are there ways to involve other businesses apart from pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, actually we started within material science, smart polymers and nanocomposites. So we've already transferred the concept to other research areas. And every time we do, we need to have a dialogue with the companies and potentially also investors, asking them, what are you interested in doing openly? At what point in the innovation process do you really need the patent and the exclusive access to a research result before you can take on the risk and invest in a result and transform it into a product? Is it always in the beginning? In that case, then an open startup is probably not a good idea within this field. But is there a pre-competitive niche that we can work within this area? Then yeah, let's look at it and say perhaps it could even benefit the field. We have just transferred the concept in another Novo Nordisk Foundation sponsored initiative called Plantifood, where we work with 3 other universities, 2 from Denmark and 1 from the Netherlands, Wageningen. And that's within food and plant science called Plantifood.
It's very interesting. Thank you for this. And before we move on with Gilles, perhaps just the last question in this initial round. Your approach is very much different compared to traditional approaches in generating innovation, if I can put it that way. In your view, what's so different compared to more traditional approaches with your open mindset, basically, system compared to what we usually see?
Well, I think the open approach is just another tool in the tech transfer toolbox. I think it's a continuum. I don't think we in any way undermine classical tech transfer. We are designed by tech transfer professionals at my university. I think the only difference is that we look at early pre-competitive stages of research that our tech transfer office usually wouldn't try to commercialize. We're just trying to valorize that type of research. So we are doing different things within different parts of the value chain.
So it feeds into tech transfer offices?
It does. It does. It creates more of the classical tech transfer, and we see this happening as we speak.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you, Marie-Louise. Now, get back to Gilles. From Denmark to the Netherlands, we have another hugely interesting initiative, and it's all about artificial intelligence. So before we move on with some questions, Gilles, would you mind, explaining to us and to the audience what is behind your concept and how do you do that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me at first, and thanks for the kind words. So I'm going to explain a bit about Scouting Science. It's a combination of big data and artificial intelligence. So can I have my slides, please? So then I can. Yes, thank you. As you can read, we try to call it AI-powered tech transfer. So I think many people know about artificial intelligence, especially the last few. Let's say 6 months, because of ChatGPT and all the initiatives that are coming up. We are working on this for about 3 years. We are a company from the Netherlands. We started doing this with the challenge, which is on the next slide. So if I can have my next slide, please. You can see that there is a lot of scientific research output, right? So if to train an artificial intelligence algorithm, you need to have a lot of data. And we thought like, okay, there is a lot of scientific research publicly available. I read an article that says about 2 million papers per year worldwide. And of course, there is a lot of potential impact within these papers. So, but it's kind of hard. So it's a big challenge to read every paper and try to identify business opportunities, either for a tech transfer office or for a corporate company or for the government. And that's also what you can see on the picture, right? So we see ourselves as scouts for tech transfer offices. So we're not on the seat of the tech transfer office that we want to commercialize the technology, but we want to bring them the opportunities to do something with it, basically. And we validated together with some Dutch universities at first, but lately also with German universities and Austrian and Portuguese. And we got back that around 70 to 80% of innovation opportunities are missed these days, which is of course a pretty big number. And it's also logical because the number of papers, you cannot keep track of every researcher within a university, every assistant professor, every postdoc. And that's also because there are limited tools available. There are tools that you can track papers, you can have some alerts, but there's no tool to really identify the business potential, which I will come back to in the next slide. And our big, let's say, goal, big hairy audacious goal, is to double the tech transfer output in the next 5 years. So, and then we are really talking about new patent opportunities, licensing opportunities, spin-offs, collaborations with industry. So that's what we are up for. That's what we are doing for the last few years. Can I go to my next slide? Then I can elaborate a bit more on what we exactly are doing. As I said before, there are many papers just out there in let's say, public databases like Scopus, Google Scholar, Web of Science. So there are a lot of publicly available papers that we can use. We keep track of that, and our algorithm is trained. I can elaborate on that for hours. I think we don't have the time to go into depth, unfortunately, today, but let's keep it simple. We trained our algorithm with 10,000s of sentences, first manually by saying, okay, this is an interesting sentence, this is not an interesting sentence, this is an interesting domain. Within this paper, there's a collaboration with the industry that can say something about the tech transfer potential. So in the end, it comes with a ranking between, let's say, 1 and 100%. And that is, let's say, the what we call the business potential score. And the beauty of it is that we train it every day. Every day there are new papers. We manually annotate sentences. Our clients are doing that, so the algorithm keeps on improving. That's also why it's AI, or at least, let's say, machine learning. You can debate about the semantics of AI and machine learning. But that's how we try to improve and train the algorithm and make it better. We now have an accuracy of about 90%, which means that, and I have to explain a bit what accuracy is in this sense, but it means that our, let's say, ranking is in line with what the client thinks. So the tech transfer professional, the business developer. And of course, it's a dashboard, it's online, so people can filter on certain topics or authors or whatever you want to filter on. So that's what we're doing. We are limited, let's say, by not by the number of papers that are out there. We are limited by keep track of everything. So we do it now client by client. So with every new university or corporate client, we try to increase our scope and learn more about business opportunities coming out of academia. So that's what I think why we were considered here as a best practice. So it's really a combination between big data and let's say machine learning algorithm. If I can go to my final slide. I think what's really important here to mention is that we indeed are a scouting tool. So that says something about our position in the value chain, of course. I talked already a bit about the business potential. We also call it a tech transfer potentials, because every client can have, let's say, different wishes and needs of what they think are interesting. Well, my fellow speaker, Marie-Louise, spoke about, let's say, technology readiness level 1 to 3. That's something that we can keep track of. Sometimes clients want to have a bit more mature technologies. So that's, let's say, fine-tuned per client. And I think what I didn't really touch upon, but maybe we can do it in discussion, because we have a lot of data, we can also see a lot of industry trends coming up. So that's why we are also working not only for tech transfer offices, but also for corporates and governments, because we have a lot of data. So we can create heat maps within certain universities, like, hey, this is interesting research. This is research that's coming up for the next 5 years, and that has, of course, also a lot of, let's say, policy implications, or at least, you can use these trends for your own benefit, of course. So hopefully this gives a bit of an intro of what we're doing, and thanks for helping me through the slides.
Thanks, Gilles. In my very lay language, you work with a university X. They have a number of publications out there, and you train your algorithm to go through all the publications, scoop everything that might be potentially interesting, and then you filter it into something that could be commercialized at some stage, right?
Yeah.
In one of the reports about your approach, I read that on monthly basis, you collect between 15 to 20 really interesting ideas that could be commercialized. You call them hidden gems.
Yeah.
And how do you go about commercializing some of these research findings? And this is something that also links to one of the questions of our from our audience, which says, do you have any follow-up with your clients to see if and how they have followed up on the opportunities? Could you please elaborate on this?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for the question. Maybe good to explain it a bit. Like there is already public research out there, so we don't need to train it for every university. So as I said before, we have an accuracy of 90% on, let's say, a lot of technology fields. So it doesn't mean that we have to train it per client every time over and over again. And these 15 to 20 leads, they are coming from data where we work with small universities in the Netherlands. If you compare it to, of course, UK or US, let's say, equivalents, they are small, which means that we identify, let's say, 15 to 20 category A papers. That's how we call them. Let's say papers that score on the business potential between 80 to 100%. And maybe I have to downgrade the hidden gem a bit, because they say, like, okay, out of these 15 to 20 leads that you find for us, we also know half of them already. And that's, of course, also due to our position. We don't know exactly what's happening within these TTOs. We are giving them the input, but sometimes they already say, okay, we already knew about this research, or we know that this is an entrepreneurial professor, so thanks. But first, that's very good confirmation that the algorithm works, but it's not directly a lead for the university. So out of these 15 to 20, you can say half of them are pretty new to them. And commercializing these technology, I think this was also one of the questions that I saw, that's not our job. That's the job of the TTO, that's the job of the business developer, that's the job of the corporate company, of the innovation managers. We can help with that, but we see it really, we try to increase these tech transfer output by giving them more input into the funnel. But let's say the conversion of the funnel from interesting research to a spin-off or a patent, we can help with that due to our background, but it's not per se our core business. So I think that's good to elaborate a bit.
Okay. Thanks for that. We have another question, very interesting. Do you also collect info on the fields of research in which Scouting Science finds the most opportunities? It goes back to what you previously mentioned about trends and how you can actually feed into policy making, both at university level, but also perhaps government level. Could you say more about these trends?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's hard to say, right? Because it's really depending on the scope. Like if you're looking at the Netherlands, for example, where we're coming from, there are 4 technical universities. They all have their own, let's say, field of expertise. Marie-Louise was talking about Wageningen. They're really focusing on plant-based and food innovation. My roots are from the University of Twente. They are a little bit, let's say, technology agnostic. So they do a lot of medtech, a lot of clean tech, a lot of nanotechnology. So because we're working for them, you're already a bit biased because these fields of research are out there. What we think is really interesting is to see the, let's say, interaction between universities. That we can identify a researcher from the University of Twente that's collaborating with, for example, Fraunhofer Institute on something interesting, and you see, let's say, lines of collaboration over there. And these are the trends that we get out of there. And of course, at a university or national level, we can say, like, hey, the highest business potential scores are coming from these types of research. But again, it's dependent on what you consider to be interesting. There's a lot to do about quantum technology, of course, and there are a lot of specific research fields working on that. So I think, but if I really have to answer this question directly, I think most business opportunities we see right now is in the medtech/pharma field. And that's also because there's a lot of, it's a mature ecosystem. So there's a lot already about IP, a lot about finding hidden gems before your competitor is doing that. So that's where we see the most uptake of our system. But I think it's more interesting to know, like, okay, what's happening in the next 10 years, right? And yeah, that's for me also hard to predict, but you can say things about quantum technology and AI, of course, what we are in, but that's a bit more science fiction right now.
Yeah, but thanks for that. It's obvious that audience is on the right track, because having in mind that med research and pharma research is something that's really trendy right now, I think you're doing well. We have another question about how AI can play a role in boosting industry academia collaboration. perhaps I'd like to link that with my question. You mentioned that your accuracy rate is up to 90%. So your algorithm is so precise that it can identify at the rate of 90% accuracy exactly what you want them to do. Is there a way to somehow upgrade this mechanism to 95%, even 100%?
Yeah, I think 100% is very difficult. If I make the comparison with ChatGPT, I think everybody is discovering it right now. You sometimes see that it's not working properly. You see it on LinkedIn or whatever you are seeing a post about it. So I think we are trying to achieve 99%. If we get there, I would be extremely happy, because it means that we can do basically everything real time. Without any manual intervention, right? Because now we are at 90%, which means that if you compare it with the first page on Google, it means that one hit doesn't belong there, right? It can be a false positive or false negative. So we are really happy with 90%, but we really want to get it to 99%. And I think the easy answer to your question is like, we need to train it with way more data. So I don't have the exact number right now because it's changing every day, but I think we have to get to, I don't know, 10, 20,000 papers per year that we're really evaluating together with clients, and that can bring it to 99%. And that's of course also our ambition. So that's what we are trying to achieve.
It appears that every company's ambition is to achieve this 100% threshold.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my last question in this part of our discussion. What's the future of AI? I mean, I think this is the most important question these days. It looks well, since late November last year, when ChatGPT got out, we are seeing a true proliferation of AI sort of tools out there. So text tools, audio, video, images, all sorts of combinations. What's your take on it? And I guess the most pressing question is, AI going to take over humankind?
That's, the honest answer is I don't know, right? Because if you look at the letter that was published, and I think it was signed by people like Elon Musk or Steve Wozniak, the former founder of Apple, they are really afraid of the AI. But you can name 60 industry leaders that are really happy with AI. So if these people don't know exactly what's going to happen, I don't know. But what I can say, what you see right now, is that it will be having a huge impact. And of course, that's kind of a cliche that I'm talking about right now. But I think on the short term, you really have to consider like what kind of jobs can be taken over by AI. So I'm a market researcher by training. So I did a lot of market research for new product market combination, market size, market growth, trends, competitors. And I think you can do a lot with AI these days. So you can do it within 10 minutes instead of 10 days. So I think it really touches upon a lot of, let's say, jobs that are out there right now. But it also creates a lot of new ones, of course. So I think it's very important, if you're not working with AI yet, to try to see what it can bring to you for your organization or within your field. And I think if you're talking about AI taking over humans, I think you're also talking about singularity, like that robots become smarter than human and stuff. So that's not only AI. I think that's an interplay between AI and robotics and quantum computing. And I think we are still far away from that. But I think we shouldn't be, let's say, blind to these things. And I think that's why regulations are so important right now. And I think that was also why a lot of people, and also in a country like Italy, want to pause these developments. Not because they are afraid of, let's say, the singularity, that computers take it over, but more that they want to have some time to come up with new regulations, because it goes so quickly. So I think you have to compare it with the, let's say, the introduction of the internet, or maybe even the introduction of the electricity. That's how big of an impact it can be. So hopefully it gives a bit of an answer to a difficult question, I would say.
Yeah, it is a very difficult question, and of course I can't expect a very straightforward answer in like 2 or 3 minutes. But it seems that we are safe for the time being.
I think we are safe for now, but I have two young children, right, from 3 and 5 years old. I'm not sure how the world looks like in, let's say, when they have my age, because it goes so quickly right now. So you shouldn't underestimate it, I guess.
Yeah,
It also brings a lot of new opportunities. I think that's the good message about it. Right?
I guess the key thing is that the more adaptable we become, the better it will be for all of us in the future, for the future generations. We have a couple more questions here, but I'm not sure we're going to have enough time to answer to those. But just connected to AI and Odin, are you seeing some more interest coming in through your initiative in artificial intelligence? Is this something that is also gaining traction in Denmark?
Yeah, a lot of the pharma companies that we work with want to incorporate artificial intelligence in drug discovery. So we will be looking into, in a potential version 2 of Odin, computational tools to drive that. So we will look into it.
Okay. We have like 10 more minutes, so I'd like to slowly start wrapping up. You both of you come from very, affluent Western countries, and both of these initiatives are really, really exceptional, with some outstanding results. Where I come from, which is southeastern part of Europe, it's different. The level of research, innovation, output, investment into this field is very modest. So my question is to both of you, to what extent your initiatives, your concepts, very pioneering concepts, could be applicable to other parts of Europe, generally speaking? So Eastern Europe, Southern Europe. Perhaps we start with you, Marie-Louise.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And, well, I'll argue that it wasn't that easy to introduce in Denmark either, because we were introducing something new. It marked a change with how things were usually done. And anyone out there working in large organization, you know how difficult it can be to introduce change. You will get a lot of pushbacks, and so did we. And we needed to do a lot of cultural maturation. But someone has to be the first to take on that risk, try something out, and produce the experience that can de-risk it for other universities and companies. And now that we've done so, a series of other universities have copy-pasted this concept and are working with us in new projects. It's not the same as to say it would be an easy copy-paste or plug-and-play in your part of Europe, but something that helps a lot when introducing change is creating the right incentive structure. And for us, that incentive structure in the formative phase was funding from the Novo Nordisk Foundation, because we provided incentives for the change. So I can only appeal to the decision-making bodies at EU level to, if you want to introduce something in your part of the of EU, provide the financial structures to do so, because that will help a lot. Setting up shop, doing something like this, doesn't create much. We have run Odin with a secretariat of 2 persons.
Yeah, so it was difficult to start with. Okay, thank you very much, Gilles.
Yeah, I first want to echo what Marie-Louise is saying. Like, it was not easy to introduce this in the Netherlands, because sometimes the more people are working within certain technology transfer offers, the more people are also having to say something about it, right? But I think it could be applied everywhere, because everybody has, let's say, scientific output, right? There are a lot of papers out there. So also in let's say, other countries in Europe, if the papers are written in English, that's first now an important boundary. We can use the system, and the system is set up to make it more efficient and more effective. So what we are seeing right now also in other countries is that there is an uptake in interest in our system when the TTO is pretty small. If there is just 1 or 2 persons working in that organization, because they really have the need to say, like, okay, we want to know what's happening, and if we're now using our reactive approach, so people come to us, we're already really busy with handling these requests, so we don't have the time to look for other opportunities. So we really see some interest over there. So I think that is already part of answer to your question, and as I said before, we are not trying to replace the TTO. We really want to support them with new opportunities, and of course also in the long term, the more opportunities we get, the more maybe funding the TTO can get for increasing their organization by saying like, hey, we now only have 1.5 FTE, but we have to deal with I don't know, 20 invention disclosure forms this year, but we know that it could be maybe 100, so give us more budget, give us more people. So that's also where we want to help with, because that also aligns with our goal to increase the tech transfer output. We cannot do that alone. We need clients from everywhere.
Okay, so some level of replicability is possible, but of course it involves, the interest of the other side and resources that the other side could potentially mobilize. Thanks to both of you. We have another question for Marie-Louise, and I think to some extent you already answered that question, but what is the reason Odin doesn't fund research projects beyond TRL 3? Is it state aid rules or another reason?
No, it is regulations actually. In order to be able to do things openly as a university, we must still comply with the local rules or the law on public invention that bids our researchers to disclose any invention that they make, so that our tech transfer office can evaluate whether or not it has commercial potential. So we can share something if it doesn't have commercial potential, which is why we also do things pre-competitively. So that was actually a limit set by our tech transfer office as a rule of thumb, saying, okay, approximately TRL level 3. Mm-hmm. In pharma, that's right before a company would, choose their lead target or a candidate to take through clinical trials, so it makes sense. It's also the cut-off point for many companies where they would need to do things closed in a confidential setting anyway. So it has sort of fitted with what we can do and what industry needs.
Yeah. Thanks for this. We are slowly wrapping up the session. We have 4 minutes left. So perhaps we just wrap up with the final question. Both of you work directly with various clients, universities or research organizations and businesses. May I ask a question from the business perspective? What would be the 2 or 3 key takeaways from your experience when working with businesses? In your case, it's connecting researchers and research organizations with businesses. There's always some level of, distrust involved. In your case, it's slightly different. But how would you explain your experiences, in particular when it comes to business and, of course, other sides too?
So do you mean the value proposition that we offer them?
Yeah.
Odin offers easy access to collaboration, new knowledge, but also recruitment of new talents from the university.
So they receive more than they would probably expect.
Yes, that has been the key finding in all of this.
And businesses are willing to participate this additionally because they see obvious value.
Yes.
Right.
Actually, we identified the areas of Odin. We focus on biomarkers and target validation with the companies as something they were comfortable doing openly. But now that we've had this project, they say, okay, we want to do more stuff openly because we can actually see value to it. So what else can we do? Are there other areas that we can open up? So they are becoming more daring in their approach to openness. So it's been exploratory on many levels, and they are willing to go the extra mile now to figure out how to create value from this.
So the way I see it, the more open all sides become, the more opportunities appear on the horizon, right?
Yes, definitely. But to begin with, hard incentives like funding, well, they speak the loudest, but as you go into it, you'll find out there are many more different benefits to be had.
And different avenues of, getting there.
Yes.
Thanks. Gilles, in your experience, what would be, the key takeaways? Could you put it that way?
Also for the companies, you mean?
Yes.
I think it's a bit similar to what Marie-Louise is saying, right? So if we basically give companies access to the walls within the universities, right? So we showcase them what's happening there. We can show them the trends where it's heading towards. And I think for a lot of companies, that's already valuable information. But if you look at the alternative right now, you can, for example, sponsor a PhD project or research line, and that's pretty costly. And then you have access to that specific research or research line. And I think for way less than that sponsorship, we can basically say, okay, we can keep track of you, for you, what's happening in Europe or in the world. So I think, again, if you're using big data and AI, but in this case in lesser sense, it's more the big data part for commercial companies. I think it opens up a lot of new insights for them, not only what's coming the next 2 years, but also where the industry is heading to. And I think that's, let's say, our value proposition to the companies, of course, and we also learn a lot from them. So again, it's some sort of an interplay. If we talk to pharma companies, they're way more interested in fundamental research. If we're talking to, let's say, clean tech or energy kind of companies, they're way more interested in, let's say, technology mature research. So that gives us every day new insights to improve our algorithms. So that's why we're also not only solely working with TTOs, but also with the companies, so with the industry.
Gilles, thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. We are 10:30 sharp, and we need
Perfect.
to close. This was immensely interesting session. I would invite our audience also to follow up with our next session, which is Master Chefs in Knowledge Valorization, Recipes for Sharpening Knowledge and Skills. Thank you once again, and good luck to all of you.